Well, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks for clicking on to today's long-range discussion for the 11th of January. And you know, there's a few elements here that I'm trying to digest, trying to break down in my mind, understand myself before I bring this to you. It looks as if you know, when we're actually looking at the stratospheric warming event and what's going on in the overall upper atmosphere above the pole, and of course, you know, after the pole has been the stratosphere has been so cold for the first part of the winter, and then of course from about Christmas up until perhaps about a week ago, we've seen a pretty strong and progressive warming of the stratosphere, and that reaction over that time period from about Christmas up until about a week ago will basically see that and its effects over the next 10 to 15 days. However, from the past week or so, we've been seeing stratospheric cooling taking place. What that would suggest, and it's actually following some of Joe Bastardi's stuff, so I'm not wanting to be accused of stealing other people's work. And it also explains to you as well that I'm not a meteorologist. I'm purely trying to understand what's going on myself, and it's quite complicated. I do find this quite testing on my own knowledge here with the situation, trying to, you know, understand where this trough's going to go. Are we going to see this cold bleed from wet eastern parts of Europe over towards us in this time period over the next 10 to 15 days? And that's the big question, folks, and that's the big argument that's going on in the forums and whatnot. Knowing what is going to take place, are we going to see this cold? Is it going to remain more over the continent? It's a big, big question, and it is hard to really fully know that answer. But certainly going from what I can see, going from the persistency of the ECMWF, the European model, it does continue to show a blossoming trough, a deepening and an expanding, as well as an intensifying trough over eastern and eventually central parts of Europe. So will we see this cold here in the UK and across Ireland as well? That is the big question. But I'm going to show you first of all what I'm talking about in terms of the stratosphere. This is what we have been seeing. We have been seeing warming over top of the pole. And what that suggests is, because the stratosphere has been so cold, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of reversal here, folks, to therefore warm the stratosphere like we've seen here. And of course, that would allow the transfer of cold from the pole down towards the mid-latitudes. And we're going to see that Canada and the northern half of the United States is going to fill with very, very cold air over the next several days into the next 10-day period. But because we have seen this taking place, where we've seen a cooling of the stratosphere once again, and of course the warming now starting to take place, the interesting thing is here, folks, it looks pretty strong in the sense that we're going to see a stronger event of warming than what we've seen with this one, the last warming event. What would that tell me? That would tell me a more lockdown and a colder period to come by perhaps the final days of January and into the month of February. I give credit to Net Weather. They did forecast a way back that February would probably be the coldest month, and it does appear to be the case. Now, folks, I was wrong in the first part of my forecast. The problem was, and I can see it very, very clearly, and you can see it yourself if you've been paying attention. Basically, the event that's taking place right now, I forecasted too early. It's as simple as that. I seen it coming way back in the summer, and of course back on the 31st of October when I released my official winter forecast. But I basically believed that this would take place earlier, and that of course meant a bust in the first part of the forecast. But that shows you, folks, perhaps the lack of knowledge on my part. I don't know. It's all one big learning curve, and no matter how experienced you are, you're not going to get this always correct. It's the timing. The atmosphere has a mind of its own. You think you're right? Well, it's going to prove you wrong, of course, and it certainly has proved me wrong, and many others as well. But certainly over the coming days, it looks as if Europe is going to get cold. There is no doubt about that. I feel pretty strongly about that, and the reason being is this model continues to suggest that we are going to see the cold. Now, over the course of tonight, we're going to see another system pushing through across northern half of Scotland. Heavy rain and an increase in strong winds. We could see for a time some gale force winds across central Scotland as well as the Highlands of Scotland. On the backside of the system, as it pushes out, that is when we're going to see this push of colder air. You can see by Thursday, the upper level map, we've got plenty of cold air to the north, plenty of cold air over Eastern Europe. Let's have a look at Friday, and it's quite obvious. You can see that push of fresh cold air, and that will actually be the kicker, the starter off of this colder air that will build over Eastern Europe. Like I've said all along, the persistency, we're looking for trends in the model, and as you can see here, as I skip through the coming days, by Saturday, look at the cold building over Eastern Europe. It's a familiar sight for sure. That suggests it will happen, and it makes me more confident in seeing this. By Monday, look at the trough again, expanding, and it's filling with colder and colder air. That air, folks, is bleeding from Asia over top and then down into this vast circulation of very cold air. Yes, we continue to see that ridge over western half of Europe, across Ireland and the UK. That would, of course, make a lot of folk that are calling for warm happy to see that. But of course, the models don't see this warming in the stratosphere, folks. And really, 10 days out, the models are pretty much useless because they're not seeing what's taking place in the upper levels. Remember, you're transferring very cold air from the upper levels, from the stratospheric level, down into the mid-tropopause. And it's once that cold then gets down to that level that the models start to see what they're playing with, what they're dealing with. Looking ahead of Thursday, look at how cold Eastern and even Central Europe is. Notice a tongue of colder air coming into the UK as well as Ireland as well. This is by Thursday the 19th. By Friday, you can see here, it's even colder across Eastern Europe. This is what's making me confident we are going to see a very decent shot of very cold air for a large part of Europe. The big question I'm asking myself is, are we going to see it as far west as where we live? By Saturday of the 21st. Bear in mind, folks, this is 10 days away. There is a lot of things, a lot of shuffling about these models are going to do. I do believe that we are going to see more blue over the UK and Ireland by this time frame. That's by Saturday the 21st. This model, I believe, is going to have more cold over Europe than what that is suggesting at the moment. Quickly, let's look over towards North America. Interesting one as well. You can see here the building of the cold, plenty of cold air already over Canada. But if you continue to look at this model, what it's telling us is the cold air is going to continue to transfer from the Arctic down into the northern half of the United States. Look at how cold this is shown here. And that, of course, is Saturday. This upcoming Saturday, plenty of cold air to talk about here, folks. You would be absolutely delusional to not see that the Arctic Oscillation negative, it's showing the cold into the mid-latitudes. The big question for everybody, if you're smart enough to understand what's going on, the big question is, where does the cold pools set up? And of course, the UK and Ireland always has a bias towards Atlantic-driven weather in a natural sense. But of course, as times change, and of course, I believe there is an increase in blocking across the hemisphere. That, of course, throws a spanner in the works, so to speak, a fly in the ointment. Look at that for next Wednesday. Look out at how cold that air mass is over Canada and, of course, the northern half of the United States. By Thursday and by Friday, you can just see that there. Like I said, the persistency in the model is important. So, a lot of things to digest, I'm going to try and keep you up to date as much as possible. I'm not chopping and changing, folks. The one key question I'm asking myself, and I'm not sure at the moment, is how far west that pool of cold will go. And I do think around the 20th, 22nd of January, we will see potentially snow across many areas, and as well as that, some pretty cool weather to talk about. But it's this new stratospheric warming event, folks, that will be very interesting for February, and I think that is the month that could really, really be very cold and snowy. Yes, I continue to show back further, and perhaps you could say that I'm delaying the cold all the time. But you know, I'm not gonna kid around. If I don't see it happening, I'm not gonna forecast it. But keep checking back. We'll continue to keep tracking this and digesting what the information is telling us. Have a great evening, folks. Bye-bye.